Hi, I'm Jeanne Schumacher, and I am founder of Simply Plant-Based, where I have a lot of programs to help you to change your health destiny. And today I have the opportunity to once again meet with Dr. Neal Barnard, who is the president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and the founder of the Barnard Medical Center. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with me again today.
It's great to be back with you, Jeanne.
Well, you have written this amazing book called Your Body in Balance, and we've been breaking it apart and diving deep into this. Now, I'm excited to dive into the next part because I'm a chemistry teacher and I am just so passionate about getting environmental chemicals and toxins out of our life that we're being exposed to. Mm-hmm. So researchers at the Harvard School of Public Health, they asked for volunteers to have a can of Progresso vegetable soup every day for 5 days. Then they tested their urine before and after. And they compared them with a group. Obviously, their control was a group that had freshly made soup. What did they find?
Yeah, this is wild. You think of Progresso soup as good soup, and it certainly is. And it sounds vaguely Italian. The cans are a little bit bigger. They're stocked well in the store. It's good soup. But what they found was that individuals eating it every day had something called BPA in their urine. It's called Bisphenol A. And that's worrisome because Bisphenol A is linked to lots of things. It's linked to diabetes, it's linked to liver disorders, it's linked to heart disease, it's linked to fertility issues. And stay tuned. I mean, there are people who say, no, it's totally safe. But no one is 100% convinced it's safe because they don't want it in children's products. They don't want kids to be exposed to it. So I think regulators are nervous about it too. So where were they getting it? It was in the resin that lines the can. And it's also in plastics, some plastic products. So you can go to the store and if you look at a health food store, they have a lot of canned soups that are marked BPA free. And even Progresso, I want to say, the company has issued statements saying that they're moving in that same direction, which is good. But you go to the health food store, you load up on BPA-free cans of soup, and you give the cashier your credit card, and the cashier takes it and then gives you your receipt, which you are now crumbling up in your hand and preparing to throw it away. Unbeknownst to you, there is BPA in the thermal paper that they use to print the receipt. So it's in the lining of the can, it's in plastic bottles, it's in the thermal paper that's used not just for receipts, but for your ATM slips and laundry slips and all kinds of stuff. And it goes through your skin into your bloodstream.
And even if it says BPA free, I'm leery about that because basically they took the molecule, the BPA molecule, and broke off a little piece. And now technically, legally, they can say it's not the same.
It's, you're making a really important point. It's sort of like lactose-free milk. Lactose-free milk has lactose in it that's just been enzymatically cleaved into two other sugars. It's all still in there. They just broke it open. And so that does mean that you won't get indigestion, but it means that you'll get the toxic effects from the breakdown products.
Yeah.
So, you're right.
Instead of going with like the hard plastic, water bottles, go with stainless steel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Phthalates. What is this and why should I be concerned?
Yeah, well, phthalates are very widespread. They're used in plastics, and they make plastic flexible. So if you've got a raincoat that doesn't bend, that's not going to work very well. So it does make the plastic flexible, and that's great. From a consumer standpoint, wonderful thing. However, the phthalates are not really bound in the plastic very tightly. They can come out, particularly if it's something that's heated. So I've got a water bottle, and it's a hot summer day, and I leave it in my car, and the sun's coming in. It's now 105 degrees inside, and the phthalates can come out and they can get into the water, and that's a problem. But the biggest sources or the biggest exposure is probably not the water bottle. It's fast food wrapping, that kind of thing. Researchers have looked into fast food wraps, and the more people eat fast food, the more the phthalates get into their bodies. And that, I think, is of real concern because Uh, Again, we need more research on this, but it looks like it's linked to behavioral problems, developmental problems. I'm talking about it in kids, and in older folks, it's linked to insulin resistance, blood pressure problems. It's a chemical that humans normally would never be exposed to.
Well, and
And
we used to see it in toxic toys.
right, yeah,
Like especially because like children, like age 2, I mean, everything goes in the mouth. I mean, 2, 3 years old,
yes,
everything goes into the mouth. And especially as they're teething, you want something that's going to calm them down. So they're making these things out of plastic and putting it, you put them in the freezer so that they freeze, and then it feels good against the gum. So, but they were literally sucking on these toxic lollipops, freeze a carrot,
yes,
let them
yes.
gnaw on a carrot,
But I want to really credit consumer groups that have really railed against these things, and I think effectively so.
Yeah.
At least as far as protecting kids, I think we need to go further than that, but there has been some progress here, which is good.
Yeah. Well, DDT, oh my gosh. I mean, this was released pretty much for commercial use after World War II, but
Right.
it has been banned since 1972. Why did we do this?
Well, DDT is kind of the classic thing. It's an effective pesticide. Then used, people would, back then, they could get DDT and you could powder the dog with it and so forth, exposing your dog, exposing yourself.
I've seen the classic picture of them spraying children's head, for lice.
It kills them. It kills the lice. The question is, will it kill you as well? It's an endocrine disruptor, meaning it changes hormone function. But worse than that, it bioaccumulates, meaning it will get into your body and it will get into body fat and just sit there. And I'm worried, frankly, I'm worried about anything that's bioaccumulative for several reasons. It means that something that is just a passing trace isn't gone. It's building up and building up and building up and can become much more toxic than an individual trace would be. Secondly, let's say you're exposed to these things when you're 6 and 8 and 12 years old, and they build up in your body, and then let's say you're a nursing woman. So you're now breastfeeding your firstborn child, and the bioaccumulative compounds in your bloodstream, they're in the breast tissue, they go into milk, and you dose your first child with a large amount of your bioaccumulated chemicals. Now, this is not a reason to not breastfeed, but it's every reason to live cleanly before we get to that point. So,
well, that's the whole point of our program, the Pregnancy Advantage. We
yes,
want to get women's body pregnant ready so that we can get those toxins out.
right.
So, I mean, we almost wiped out the bald eagle. I mean, single-handedly,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
almost in one generation, because it had such an impact on the eggs that the shells became so soft that as they sat on the eggs, they couldn't support them. And we almost wiped out the bald eagle in one generation.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And it's not as if banning these things means that they're gone.
Right.
They stick around in the environment for a very long period of time, and the effects on animals and the effects on humans can be quite persistent.
Well, I know there's a lot of pesticides out there, but there's one big one now that is out there, and glyphosate.
Right.
What's going on here?
Yeah, glyphosate, it's marketed as Roundup, and it's hugely popular, and it's been brilliantly marketed and is widely used. And what it does is it blocks, the idea is to kill weeds, and it blocks the enzymes that the weeds need to grow. So it will effectively kill the plants. It'll kill all kinds of plants. It, in fact, will kill the crops that you're trying to grow. So the company that makes it also will sell plants that are resistant to it. So you can spray the whole field, and then the ones that resist it will flourish. And then your neighbor will be upset because the wind has blown it into his or her area and create problems there. The issue, well, there's many issues, and it's still under study, and many people will try to make a case that it's not really dangerous, but others will say, wait a minute, you mix some glyphosate with breast cancer cells. And what you'll see is that it appears to attach to the estrogen receptor and can push the cells to proliferate, which is exactly what you don't want. The concern is that it's carcinogenic. Authorities disagree about this, but the World Health Organization has raised a red flag about exactly that. So my own view is I think it's well worth avoiding, and another reason to buy organic products that you know are not going to be treated with that.
Right. Well, the second leading herbicide in America is atrazine. So what's some of the issues going on here?
Yeah, atrazine, also very popular, and it's used on all kinds of things. It's used on feed grains that are going to be fed to livestock, but you're going past a golf course and admiring how gorgeous it is. Well, that's because it's been, in some cases, chemically treated. So you'll see it in gardens and lawns at golf courses and so forth. And the problem is that it rains. And when it rains, the water carries the atrazine into the waterways. And so what that also means is then you open your faucet downstream and you're getting water with atrazine in it. And it's an interesting thing that you will see pesticides peak in water during the spring when everyone's planting. And so this is going to be the big time for us to be using these chemicals. How dangerous is it? Stay tuned. We're getting more data all the time, but there has been some data that is connected to low birth weight in exposed infants. So keep in mind, when we're talking about these things, weed killers and insecticides and others, their whole job is to kill something. So the idea that they're all going to be somehow magically safe is a little bit of a fantasy. So there you have it.
Well, killing our gut biome.
Killing your gut biome, affecting your growth in the same way as they could affect the growth of the target species. Exactly.
Well, I had heard, going back to atrazine, that in male frogs, exposure to atrazine kind of causes a chemical castration, causing them to develop female sex characteristics. I mean, okay, I get it. We're not frogs, but the fact that males develop female sex characteristics is pretty disturbing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think people are right to be concerned. The sexual effects are, in my view, probably the least of our worries. But if they're doing that, what that means is that they're altering hormonal function. And so if something alters hormonal function, then downstream, you're thinking you're going to start having cancer cases, which is of more concern.
Well, if you think about the frogs, though, too, they also, if they're getting targeted in this, semi-aquatic environment that they live in, what is that doing to us?
Needless to say, in the balance of nature, frogs are natural insect killers in their own way. You wipe them all out, you're going to be changing the ecosystem in broad ways. So we better living through chemistry was a saying that, and there's some truth to that. I mean, as you know, as a chemistry expert and teacher, chemistry has done wonderful things for us, but it is powerful, dangerous, potentially deadly. It's sort of academic dynamite, and we have to be really very, very careful with how it's used. And when it's used in food production, we can run into trouble. Well,
another one that was banned in 1977 was PCBs.
Right.
But they still, you touched on this a little bit, they're still persistent in the environment. What are these doing to us?
Yeah, these are polychlorinated biphenyls, and they were banned, 40 years ago or more. But yeah, they're environmentally persistent. Once they're in the environment, they stay there, and they affect the immune system, they affect the reproductive system. A variety of endocrine systems are involved, nervous system as well. They're toxic. They end up in breast milk. They are going to be there for a long time, and they will then reach the baby who's breastfeeding. But even before breastfeeding, they will probably cross the placenta and hit the child in utero. And if I'm recalling correctly, researchers have looked at breast milk samples of meat-eating women and vegan women. And the vegans have much cleaner breast milk, except for PCBs, where it's about the same, because PCBs are so persistent, and they can even be in the atmosphere and get on all kinds of stuff. So it's a big issue. Time will improve this, but it's going to take a long time.
Well, another chemical additive called citric acid is frequently added to a lot of food products. What are the issues here?
This is a funny one, I have to say. Citric acid is in sodas,
Yeah.
and a wide variety of foods. If you look at labels, you see it. And it sounds like somebody squeezed a lemon into your soda, and you're getting something from citrus. What it is it came from a mold in China. Typically, it's a tangy flavoring, but it's made through a fermentation process where you take these huge vats of mold, and through genetic engineering, you can get them to create citric acid. And the concern is that there are people who will swear that their migraines are triggered by citric acid or other health issues, in the same way as they could be triggered by an allergy or something. It's not exactly an allergy, but it's a sensitivity. So what is it about? It's probably not the citric acid. It's probably the mold that came with it. Because you've made it in this vat, you try to clean it out. It's not really detectable in the sodas, but it's there. So affected people just have to read labels. So how dangerous is it? I don't know. But we were doing a migraine study here, and we had 1 or 2 people where it was a trigger for them every time. I don't think it was the citric acid. I think it was the mold that contaminated it.
Wow.
Yeah, funny, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a unique one when I read that one.
Right.
So, well, anything that is placed on the body, literally in 26 seconds is in the bloodstream. And I was a former elementary principal, and especially for the little people, trying to get them to go to lunch, to get first graders to go wash their hands with soap and water. That could take the entire lunch period, just to get them to wash their hands. I mean, it's like herding cats. So
exactly.
The teachers would just line them up and start going down the line and give them, a squirt with antibacterial solution. And I get it. I understand why they were doing that. They wanted them to be sanitary going in to have lunch. They're going to be eating with their hands, and everything goes into their mouth. I mean, without question. But Triclosan, wow, that was one of the major antibacterial agents that was used. And in theory, this was banned, but I'm still seeing it in a lot of products. So what's going on here?
It is there. And our concern there is actually related to the thyroid, that it seems to disrupt thyroid function. What you said is exactly right. It's used for its surface purpose, that it will knock out bacteria, but it does go through the skin. And so the concern is that it's having an endocrine effect, particularly on the thyroid. So I think it makes perfect sense to not use it. There is nothing quite like soap and water. So there you go.
Well, for us, there's 2 major types of chemicals in the body that the body has to deal with. Fat-soluble, water-soluble.
Right.
If it's water-soluble, you're peeing it out. But if it's fat-soluble, it's just rolling right into the fat cells. Is this also, I mean, not just for us as animal, one of the animals, but is it for the animal kingdom? Are we seeing this happening with them too?
Yes. When something is a fat, what you said is right. If something is a fat-soluble chemical, it's persistent. It's not going anywhere. You're not peeing it out. It's building up in animals who are exposed to it. It's building up in you. This is a good reason to not eat animal products, because you get whatever they have been storing up. And researchers have looked at human beings. And what they're looking at is specifically this process we call biomagnification, where if you have volunteered to be at the head of the top of the food chain, everything that has been eaten along that chain, you get. And there was an amazing study of over 400 people. And they looked at who had the highest levels of chemical pollutants in their bloodstream. And then they looked at health effects for them. And what they found is that they had the more chemicals you had, the higher your risk of the elements of metabolic syndrome. With the syndrome that's central obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and lipid disorders. So what we think, even though these things are predominantly food related, part of the way foods act is that they bring unhelpful chemicals into our bodies.
So hormones are routinely used in meat and dairy production. They're implanted as these little small pellets on the back of the ear of the animal in hopes of getting more meat for less feed.
Right.
Should we be concerned about this?
I think we should. First of all, just the animal products themselves, hormone treated or not, are problematic. But you're adding to the problems, I think, by using these hormones. And some of them are names that people will recognize, like estrogens, progesterone, testosterone, but there are also synthetic hormones that are used as well. And part of the reason that we're concerned is that there was a really good study done at Rutgers Cancer Institute, and they looked not at adult men and women, they looked at girls. They're 9 years old, they're 10 years old, and they found that some of these hormones were actually showing up in their bodies. And they then looked at were there health effects. And they found a correlation between the presence of these anabolic hormones used in livestock with suppressed growth in girls. The girls were shorter. They were chemical exposed. So what we're thinking is, yes, these things, the farming community says that by the time it gets to slaughter, there's very little left in there. The fact is that hormones work in very, very small quantities. So I think there's every reason to avoid the use of the chemicals, but the important thing is avoid those products, avoid animal products anyway. It's just another reason to avoid them.
Well, I know you shared my story in your book.
Yes.
And my trip...
Thank you for that, by the way.
Absolutely.
I
remember having the conversation with you,
yes.
At Dr. Otzfeld's conference.
Exactly, yes.
And my trip, started with a journey to the emergency room. I mean, I had over 105-degree fever. I mean, that's Fahrenheit, not Celsius.
Yeah.
Somebody commented on that, and I'm like, no, Fahrenheit. Okay.
Yes, you weren't boiling.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this
vaporized.
conversation. Yeah, I'd be vaporized. Anyway, the doctor who treated me was not only a medical doctor, but she was a nutritionist as well. And as you and I both know, that's a pretty darn rare combination. And when I got out, I went to see her as, a nutritionist. And she started me on, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn.
Right.
And I noticed that as I started to lose weight, my thyroid started to go wonky.
Right.
My TSH rose to a 4.7, which indicates a sluggish thyroid. And of course, the immediate response of my doctor was to put me on medication. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I mean, she handed me the prescription and she had circled 4 refills on that. And I'm looking at this prescription going, Doc, how long am I supposed to be on this medication? And she just looked at me straight in the eye and said, for the rest of your life. And I'm like, no. And she said,
right.
I've never seen anybody heal their thyroid until now. So anyway, but as I lost weight, I had chronic health issues, that I had been dealing with had disappeared, from infections. Oh my God. I had UTIs, almost monthly. They were bad. Once a month, and I'd be put on antibiotics.
Oh yeah.
And then migraines, but those all disappeared. All those things. I found myself I was healthier. I wasn't getting sick like I used to, but also that my TSH came down and normalized, and I'm no longer, on medications. So what do you think happened in my case?
Well, here's what I'm going to suspect. So you're following a healthier diet, and initially you're getting sicker, where your thyroid is misbehaving, and then as time goes on, it comes back to life. So what's that about? We were talking earlier about bioaccumulation of chemicals. So whatever chemicals you were exposed to in food, in the air, if they're fat soluble, they're in your body fat. And now you're losing.
7 Chevy license plate that came out, baby.
so now you're losing your body fat. It's going away. Where do those chemicals go? They don't just evaporate, they go into your bloodstream. And so it's a gradual process of shedding that body fat. And during that time, you may well have been liberating the chemicals that were stored. And the thyroid is very vulnerable. It can be slowed down, and that's probably what was happening. And if your thyroid is sluggish, then your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, is produced to try to push it to get it going. And your doctor is saying, you're hypothyroid, I need to medicate you. And what happened? Eventually, you cleaned yourself out. Those chemicals were gone. And your thyroid says, whoa, I'm glad that's over. And your doctor says, I don't know how you did it, but you conquered this disease. So I think it was probably shedding the bioaccumulated chemicals.
Yeah. Okay, we can reduce our chemical exposure, by avoiding animal products. Okay, got it.
Yes.
But when we buy produce, should we get organic?
The short answer is yes. I would always get organic. I think it's always a good idea. But there are some foods where it really matters more than others. And the Environmental Working Group actually has a list they call the Dirty Dozen that's very popular. You go to, I think it's ewg.org, and they update it every year. But to make it kind of simple, let's say I eat a strawberry, and the strawberry was either pesticide treated or not, it matters, because I'm not going to peel that strawberry. I'm going to eat the outside of it. But let's say I get an avocado. If it was pesticide treated, I'm not eating the outside of that avocado. I'm going to remove the peel and throw it away. So one rule of thumb is that if you eat the whole thing, if you eat the peel, then organic is often a good choice. The other thing is that things that are really fragile, you can imagine a leaf of spinach out in the field and the insects can just tear it up easily. It's a fair bet that the farmers are saying, I'm going to kill the insects, and they're likely to use more pesticides. So those rules of thumb, you can decide, maybe it doesn't matter so much with an avocado, but it really matters with strawberries. And there are many other foods like that. But for my money, I think that what you put in your body is the most important thing. And if you have to pay a little extra to have it be clean, it's good to do.
Well, some people say it's too expensive, but hello, you're not eating meats. You're not eating processed foods. You're not eating dairy products. Those are some of the most expensive things in the grocery store.
Yes, and also, here's the food with chemicals in it. Here's food that doesn't have chemicals in it. My feeling is, whatever they're going to charge you, you just gotta. That's just the way it is. Now that said, let's say you're somewhere and there just isn't anything organic to eat, or you're at a restaurant and you just don't know. You're always better off eating vegetables and fruits and whole grains and beans, whether they're organic or not, compared with eating cheese, meat, fish, whatever, because those animals have been consuming heaven knows what. And it's always cleaner to eat your vegetables and fruits.
Well, what about GMOs? How risky are these?
I have to say it's an experiment that I would kind of wish was not happening. Genetically modified organisms. In the United States, I have to say, I see this every time I go back to Fargo, where I grew up. And you get off the plane and you rent your car and you go out of town about a mile. And as far as the eye can see, there's corn crops, all identical, beautiful, genetically modified livestock feed. No human is going to eat any of that. And on the other side, it's all soybeans, all genetically engineered. No human is going to eat that. That's not for tofu. That's to fatten chickens and pigs and so forth. And I'm inclined to think that these are not healthy. I think we've got to stay tuned. The health effects are something that I think are going to become apparent only over time. But why are we doing this? It has nothing to do with health. Nobody is genetically modifying something to make it healthier for you. They're genetically modifying it either so that it grows at a different rate, or so that it's more easily stored, or so that it has a longer shelf life. And for my money, I think it's better to stick with foods that are as natural as possible.
Well, we're seeing so many people with gluten issues. I mean, do you think that has a relationship with the GMO wheat?
It could. It's been a big puzzle that we've seen, is whereas in the past people seem to tolerate wheat better, now you're seeing more people who are intolerant to it. It could be that it's GMO. It could also be, even apart from GMO, it could just be different breeds. There are lots of different ways of raising the wheat and lots of different seeds to choose from, and it could be that as well. So stay tuned.
All right. So what can we do to protect ourselves from chemical exposures?
Number one, avoid animal products. That means have plant products, of course. And if you have a choice, I think that fresh or frozen is going to be better than canned. There's no BPA in the freezer. And why not prepare things from scratch? Beans and things are actually really surprisingly easy. When you're microwaving things, keep in mind that the container is going to get hot. So use a glass container, ceramic, don't use a plastic container. Look at the label. If it says BPA free, that's a good thing. Clean water, spring water is usually pretty good. If you need to have a filter, fair enough. The best ones are the reverse osmosis ones. If the cashier says, here's your receipt, you can say, just toss it in the trash for me. That will avoid the BPA on it. And check the labels on personal care products. And if you do those things, you're going to be doing pretty well.
Well, I'm just going to throw a plug out to the EWG because they do have a cosmetic database and they have an app called Healthy Living, which you can download for free. And you can scan the barcode and it will show you whether, how this is rated on a scale of 1 to 10 for personal care products, but they also have one for cleaning products as well.
Fantastic.
So,
well, thank you for getting the word out about all these important things.
Absolutely. So, and I just want to point out that you can find the other episodes we've done. This is part 6 of a 7-part series. So you can find the other episodes on my YouTube channel, Jeanne Schumacher, as well as the website, Simply Plant Based. And there's a lot of other resources to help you to change your health destiny. So thank you very much, Dr. Barnard. Once again, you're amazing.
Thank you, Jeanne. It's been great. Thanks so much.